The clink of champagne flutes turned to shattering glass as Olivia Sinclair's world imploded. In an instant, the heiress became the help, thrust into a reality she never imagined possible. The crystal chandeliers of Lucille cast a soft, ethereal glow over the dining room, their light dancing off the polished silverware and fine china. Olivia Sinclair sat at her usual table, a glass of Chateau Margaux, 1982, held delicately between manicured fingers. She surveyed the room with a practiced eye, noting the other patrons with a mixture of recognition and disdain. "Darling, you simply must try the foie gras," Sophie Chun cooed from across the table, her eyes sparkling with mischief. "It's absolutely divine." Olivia raised an eyebrow, her lips curling into a smirk. "Oh, Sophie, you know I don't eat anything so pedestrian. I'll stick to my usual." As if on cue, a waiter materialized at her elbow. "Good evening, Miss Sinclair. Your usual beluga caviar to start." "Of course," Olivia replied without even glancing at the man. "And make sure it's properly chilled this time. Last week, it was practically tepid." The waiter nodded, his face a mask of practiced neutrality. "Of course, Miss Sinclair. My apologies for any previous inconvenience." As he turned to leave, Olivia's eye caught on a small imperfection in his uniform, a barely visible loose thread at the cuff. Her nose wrinkled in disgust. "Wait," she called, her voice sharp enough to draw the attention of nearby diners. The waiter turned back, a flicker of apprehension crossing his features. "Yes, Miss Sinclair?" Olivia leaned forward, her voice dripping with disdain. "I hope you realize that your slovenly appearance reflects poorly on this establishment. I'd hate to have to speak to management about the declining standards here." A hush fell over the immediate vicinity, other patrons pretending not to listen while hanging on every word. The waiter's face flushed, a mix of embarrassment and anger flashing in his eyes before he schooled his features back to neutrality. "I apologize, Miss Sinclair. I'll attend to it immediately." As he hurried away, Sophie leaned across the table, her voice low. "Ollie, don't you think that was a bit harsh? It was just a tiny thread." Olivia waved a dismissive hand. "Please, Sophie. People like that need to learn their place. Besides, Daddy practically owns this place. If I don't maintain standards, who will?" Sophie opened her mouth as if to argue, then thought better of it. She'd known Olivia long enough to recognize when it was pointless to push back. Instead, she changed the subject. "So, have you heard about the new club opening next week? Apparently, it's going to be the most exclusive spot in the city." Olivia's eyes lit up, her previous irritation forgotten. "Oh, do tell." As Sophie launched into the details, Olivia allowed her gaze to wander around the restaurant once more. Lucille was her domain, a place where she reigned supreme. From her vantage point near the floor-to-ceiling windows, she could see the glittering expanse of Manhattan spread out below, a kingdom of concrete and glass that seemed to exist solely for her pleasure. Her father, Ethan Sinclair, had built an empire from nothing, transforming the New York skyline with his visionary real estate developments. Olivia had grown up in penthouses and private jets, never wanting for anything. It was a life of privilege that she took for granted, seeing it as her birthright rather than a fortunate accident of fate. As the evening wore on, Olivia found herself growing increasingly bored with Sophie's chatter. Her friend meant well, but sometimes her enthusiasm for the latest trends and gossip grated on Olivia's nerves. She found herself longing for something more, though she couldn't quite put her finger on what that might be. The waiter returned with her caviar, presenting it with a flourish. Olivia examined it critically, searching for any flaw she could use as an excuse to berate him further. To her slight disappointment, everything seemed to be in order. "Will there be anything else, Miss Sinclair?" the waiter asked, his tone perfectly polite despite the earlier interaction. Olivia was about to dismiss him when she noticed something that made her blood boil. A single drop of red wine had somehow found its way onto the pristine white tablecloth, mere inches from her plate. "What is this?" she hissed, jabbing a finger at the offending stain. The waiter's eyes widened as he saw the drop. "I'm terribly sorry, Miss Sinclair. I'll change the cloth immediately." "Sorry?" Olivia's voice rose, drawing attention once again. "Do you have any idea how much this dress costs?" If even a drop of that wine had gotten on me, it would have been ruined. Olivia, calm down, Sophie whispered, glancing around nervously. It's just a tiny spot on the tablecloth. No harm done. But Olivia was beyond reason now, her face flushed with indignation. I want to speak to the manager immediately. This level of incompetence is unacceptable. The waiter, looking increasingly distressed, nodded quickly. Of course, Miss Sinclair. I'll fetch him right away. As he hurried off, Olivia sat back in her chair, a look of smug satisfaction on her face. That should teach him, she muttered. Sophie sighed, shaking her head. Oli, don't you think you're overreacting a bit? He seemed like a nice guy, and accidents happen. Olivia fixed her friend with a withering glare. Nice? Sophie, darling, these people aren't our friends. They're here to serve us, and when they fail at that one simple task, they need to be put in their place. Before Sophie could respond, a distinguished-looking man in an impeccable suit approached their table. Miss Sinclair, he said, his voice smooth and controlled. I understand there's been an issue. How can I help? Olivia launched into a tirade, detailing every perceived slight and flaw in excruciatingly exaggerated. The manager listened patiently, his face a mask of professional concern. When she finally ran out of steam, he nodded gravely. I assure you, Miss Sinclair, this matter will be dealt with severely. Please, allow me to comp your meal this evening as a small token of our apology. Olivia sniffed, somewhat mollified. I should hope so, and I expect that waiter will be looking for a new job by tomorrow. The manager hesitated for a fraction of a second, something unreadable flashing in his eyes. We will certainly take appropriate action, Miss Sinclair. Please, enjoy the rest of your evening. As he walked away, Sophie leaned in close. Oli, don't you think that was a bit much? Getting someone fired over a drop of wine? Olivia rolled her eyes. Oh, please. If he can't handle a simple task like serving wine without making a mess, he has no business working in a place like this. I did him a favor, really. Now he can go find a job more suited to his limited capabilities. Sophie opened her mouth as if to argue further, and seemed to think better of it. She'd known Olivia long enough to recognize when it was pointless to push back against her friend's stubbornness. As the evening wore on, Olivia found her mood improving. The thrill of exercising her power, of bending others to her will, always left her feeling invigorated. By the time dessert arrived, a decadent chocolate soufflé that was Lucille's specialty, she was once again in high spirits. You know, she mused, savoring a spoonful of the rich confection. I think Daddy mentioned something about potentially buying this place. Can you imagine? I could revamp the entire menu, get rid of all these stuffy old waiters, really bring it into the 21st century. Sophie nodded, though her enthusiasm seemed somewhat forced. That would be something, she said carefully. Olivia, caught up in her own vision, didn't notice her friend's hesitation. Oh, it would be fabulous. We could host the most exclusive parties, really make it the place to be seen. No more riffraff like that incompetent waiter ruining things for everyone else. As they finished their dessert and prepared to leave, Olivia cast one last glance around the restaurant. Her eyes fell on the waiter she had berated earlier, now clearing a table across the room. For a moment, she thought she saw him looking at her, an unreadable expression on his face. But when she blinked, he was focused on his task, head down as he efficiently cleared away dirty dishes. Shrugging off the odd feeling, Olivia stood, smoothing down her designer dress. Come on, Sophie. Let's go see if that new club you mentioned is worth our time. As they made their way to the elevator, Olivia felt a sense of satisfaction settle over her. This was her world, and everyone in it existed to cater to her whims. It was the natural order of things, as far as she was concerned. Little did she know that her actions that night had set in motion a chain of events that would shake the very foundations of her carefully constructed world. The waiter she had so casually dismissed was far more than he appeared, and Olivia Sinclair was about to learn a lesson in humility that she would never forget. As the elevator descended, Olivia's phone buzzed with a message from her father. Meeting tomorrow, 9 am sharp. Don't be late. She frowned, her good mood evaporating. Ethan Sinclair rarely requested her presence at business meetings, preferring to keep his daughter at arm's length from the inner workings of Sinclair Enterprises. "Everything okay?" Sophie asked, noting her friend's sudden change in demeanor. Olivia shrugged, affecting nonchalance. "Just daddy being daddy. Probably wants to lecture me about my spending again." The truth was more complex. Despite her outward bravado, Olivia craved her father's approval. Ethan Sinclair was a self-made man, having built his real estate empire from the ground up. He'd grown up in a working-class neighborhood in Queens, and despite his current wealth, he'd never lost the work ethic that had propelled him to success. Olivia, on the other hand, had been born into luxury. She'd never known a world without private jets, designer clothes, and five-star restaurants. While Ethan had tried to instill his values in his daughter, he'd also indulged her every whim, perhaps out of guilt for the long hours he spent away from home building his business. As they exited Lucille and stepped into the warm New York night, Olivia pushed thoughts of her father aside. "Where to now?" she asked Sophie, forcing a smile. Sophie hesitated. "Actually, I think I'm going to call it an early meeting tomorrow." Olivia raised an eyebrow. "Since when do you have early meetings? Come on, the night is young." But Sophie stood firm. "Sorry, Oli. Some of us have to work for a living, you know?" There was an edge to her voice that Olivia couldn't quite place. Before she could press the issue, Sophie was already sliding into a waiting taxi, leaving Olivia alone on the sidewalk. For a moment, Olivia felt a pang of something. Loneliness? Frustration? She quickly pushed the feeling aside. She didn't need Sophie or anyone else. She was Olivia Sinclair, and the city was her playground. With a toss of her hair, she signaled her driver. "Take me to Velvet," she commanded, naming the hottest new club in the meatpacking district. As the car glided through the late-night traffic, Olivia's mind wandered back to her childhood. She remembered watching her father work, his desk piled high with blueprints and contracts. She'd been fascinated by his focus, the way he could look at an abandoned lot and see a gleaming skyscraper. "One day, all of this will be yours," he told her once, gesturing at the New York skyline from his office window. "But you have to earn it, Olivia. Nothing in this world comes for free." At the time, she'd nodded solemnly, determined to make him proud. But as she grew older, the allure of the social scene had proven too strong. It was easier to be the belle of every ball than to wrestle with zoning laws and construction permits. The car pulled up to Velvet, and Olivia pushed the memories aside. This was her element. As soon as she stepped out of the car, heads turned. The line outside the club parted like the Red Sea, the bouncer unhooking the velvet rope without a word. Inside, the bass pulsed through her body, the rhythm matching her heartbeat. Within minutes, she was surrounded by a coterie of admirers, each vying for her attention. This was where she felt most alive, most herself. Hours passed in a blur of champagne and dancing. It wasn't until the first light of dawn began to creep through the club's windows that Olivia remembered her father's message. With a start, she realized she had less than 3 hours until the meeting. Cursing under her breath, she made her excuses and rushed out, ignoring the protests of her latest conquest. Her driver, ever faithful, was waiting outside. "Home now," she snapped, collapsing into the back seat. As the car wound its way through the early morning traffic, Olivia felt a familiar sense of dread settling in her stomach. She'd disappointed her father countless times before, but something told her this meeting was different, important. She arrived home with barely an hour to spare. A quick shower and a change of clothes later, she was back in the car, this time headed for the imposing Sinclair Enterprises building in Midtown. As she walked through the lobby, Olivia felt eyes on her. The employees knew who she was, of course, but there was something different in their gazes today. Judgment? Pity? She quickened her pace, keeping her head high. Ethan Sinclair's office occupied the entire top floor of the building. As Olivia stepped off the elevator, his secretary gave her a tight smile. "He's waiting for you," she said, gesturing towards the heavy oak doors. Taking a deep breath, Olivia smoothed her skirt and pushed the doors open. Her father sat behind his massive desk, his face unreadable. To her surprise, they weren't alone. A man she didn't recognize sat in one of the visitors' chairs, his back to her. "Ah, Olivia," Ethan said, his voice cool. "So good of you to join us. I believe you've already met Mr. Thompson." The man in the chair turned, and Olivia felt her blood run cold. It was the waiter from Lucille, the one she berated and tried to have fired. But gone was the deferential demeanor. Now, he looked at her with calm confidence, a slight smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "Miss Sinclair," he said, rising to his feet. "A pleasure to see you again." Olivia stood frozen, her mind racing. What was going on? Why was this waiter in her father's office, dressed in an impeccable suit that probably cost more than a year's salary at Lucille? "Olivia," her father's voice cut through her confusion. "Allow me to properly introduce Marcus Thompson, CEO of Thompson Hotels and our newest business partner." The room seemed to spin. Marcus Thompson was a legend in the hospitality industry, known for his chain of ultra-luxury hotels and his penchant for hands-on management. And she had tried to have him fired over a drop of wine. I don't understand," Olivia stammered, her usual poise deserting her. Ethan's face hardened. "Sit down, Olivia. We have a lot to discuss about your future in this company." As she sank into the remaining chair, Olivia felt the ground shifting beneath her feet. For the first time in her life, she realized that her actions might have consequences beyond her control. The world she thought she ruled was about to change dramatically, and she was woefully unprepared for what was to come. Marcus Thompson leaned back in his chair, his eyes never leaving Olivia's face. There was no malice in his expression, but something far more unsettling, disappointment tinged with pity. In that moment, Olivia realized that her carefully constructed world was about to come crashing down around her. Ethan Sinclair's voice cut through the tense silence like a knife. "Olivia, do you have any idea what you've done?" Olivia's mind raced, searching for a way to regain control of the situation. "Daddy, I can explain." "Explain?" Ethan's voice rose, his carefully cultivated calm cracking. "Explain how you nearly sabotaged a multi-million-dollar deal because you couldn't be bothered to treat people with basic respect." Marcus Thompson held up a hand, his voice calm and measured. "If I may, Ethan, I think it's important that Miss Sinclair understands the full scope of the situation." Olivia bristled at being spoken about as if she weren't in the room, but for once, she held her tongue. Marcus turned to her, his eyes penetrating. "Miss Sinclair, I make it a point to regularly work alongside my staff in all of my properties. It gives me invaluable insight into the day-to-day operations and helps me understand the challenges my employees face." He paused, letting the information sink in. "Last night, I was at Lucille not as a CEO, but as a simple waiter. And what I witnessed was illuminating, to say the least." Olivia felt her face flush with shame and anger. "So this was all some sort of test? A trap?" Ethan slammed his hand on the desk. "This is exactly the problem, Olivia. You still don't get it. Not everything is about you." Marcus held up his hand again, his calm a stark contrast to Ethan's anger. "It wasn't a trap, Miss Sinclair. It was an opportunity, one that, unfortunately, you failed to recognize." He leaned forward, his voice low and intense. "Do you know what I look for in potential business partners? It's not just about money or market share. I look for people who understand the value of every individual in an organization, from the CEO to the dishwasher." Olivia swallowed hard, the full weight of her actions beginning to settle on her shoulders. Marcus continued, "Your behavior last night showed me that you lack that understanding, and it made me seriously reconsider whether Sinclair Enterprises is the right partner for my company." Ethan's face was ashen. "Marcus, I assure you, my daughter's actions do not reflect the values of Sinclair Enterprises." "Perhaps not," Marcus conceded, "but they do raise questions about the future leadership of the company." Olivia felt as if she'd been slapped. "Future leadership? What are you talking about?" Ethan sighed heavily, suddenly looking older than his years. "Olivia, I've been grooming you to take over the company someday, but after last night, I'm not sure you're ready for that responsibility." The words hit Olivia like a physical blow. She'd always assumed she'd inherit the company one day, but she'd never given much thought to what that actually meant. Now, faced with the possibility of losing it all, she realized how much she'd taken for granted. "Daddy, please," she began, but Ethan cut her off. No, Olivia. It's time you understood the consequences of your actions. He turned to Marcus. What do you propose? Marcus leaned back, considering. I'm still interested in the partnership, Ethan, but I have conditions. Olivia held her breath, waiting for the axe to fall. Miss Sinclair, Marcus said, turning to her, I'm offering you a chance to prove yourself. For the next 6 months, you'll work in various positions throughout my hotel chain. You'll start at the bottom, housekeeping, kitchen staff, front desk. You'll work your way up, learning every aspect of the business. Olivia's jaw dropped. You can't be serious. I'm not some minimum wage worker. That's exactly the attitude that needs to change, Marcus said firmly. If you can complete this program and demonstrate real growth, I'll not only move forward with the partnership, but I'll also recommend to your father that you be given a real leadership role in Sinclair Enterprises. Ethan nodded slowly. And if she refuses? Marcus shrugged. Then I'm afraid I'll have to reconsider the partnership entirely. And I would strongly advise you to reconsider your succession plans. The room fell silent as the weight of the ultimatum settled over them. Olivia felt as if she were drowning, her perfectly ordered world crumbling around her. This is ridiculous, she said, her voice shaking. Daddy, you can't seriously be considering this. I'm your daughter. Ethan's face was etched with disappointment. Yes, you are. Which is why it's time you learned what that really means. This isn't just about inheriting wealth, Olivia. It's about responsibility, about understanding the value of hard work and treating people with respect. He leaned forward, his voice softening slightly. I failed you, Olivia. I gave you everything without teaching you the value of anything. This is my chance to correct that mistake. Olivia felt tears pricking at her eyes, a mix of anger, shame, and fear overwhelming her. And if I refuse? Ethan's face hardened again. Then you'll be cut off. No more credit cards, no more trust fund. You'll have to make your own way in the world. The thought was terrifying. Olivia had never had to worry about money in her life. The idea of suddenly being without her safety net was almost unthinkable. Marcus spoke up again, his voice gentler now. Miss Sinclair, I know this seems harsh, but I want you to understand, this isn't about punishment. It's about growth. I see potential in you, potential your father has always seen. This is a chance to realize that potential, to become someone you can be proud of. Olivia looked between the two men, feeling trapped. Part of her wanted to storm out, to call their bluff. Surely her father wouldn't really cut her off, would he? But another part of her, a part she barely recognized, whispered that maybe, just maybe, this was the wake-up call she needed. She thought about Sophie, about the look of disappointment in her friend's eyes the night before. She thought about the waiter, Marcus, and how she'd treated him. For the first time in her life, Olivia Sinclair felt truly ashamed of her actions. Taking a deep breath, she straightened her spine and met Marcus's gaze. When do I start? A flicker of approval flashed in Marcus's eyes. Tomorrow morning, 6 a.m. sharp at the Thompson Grand. Ask for Maria in housekeeping. She'll be expecting you. Olivia nodded, her mind already racing with the implications of what she'd just agreed to. As she stood to leave, her father's voice stopped her. Olivia, Ethan said, his tone softer now. I'm proud of you for making this choice. It won't be easy, but I believe in you. Fighting back tears, Olivia nodded once and left the office. As the elevator descended, she leaned against the wall, feeling utterly drained. In the span of a few hours, her entire world had been turned upside down. But as the initial shock began to wear off, Olivia felt something else stirring within her, a sense of determination, of purpose. For the first time in her life, she had been given a real challenge, a chance to prove herself. As she stepped out onto the busy New York street, Olivia Sinclair took a deep breath. Tomorrow would be the first day of her new life, and she was determined to face it head-on. The harsh buzz of an unfamiliar alarm jolted Olivia awake at 4:30 am. For a moment, she lay disoriented in her plush king-size bed, wondering why on earth she was up at this ungodly hour. Then the events of the previous day came rushing back, and she groaned, burying her face in her pillow. This is insane, she muttered to herself as she dragged herself out of bed. The sun hadn't even risen yet, and already she was regretting her decision. But the thought of disappointing her father again and potentially losing everything was enough to keep her moving. As she fumbled through her closet, Olivia realized with a start that she had no idea what to wear. Her wardrobe was full of designer dresses and high-end fashion, nothing suitable for, what had Marcus called it, housekeeping? In the end, she settled on a pair of yoga pants and a simple t-shirt, probably the most casual outfit she owned. As she caught sight of herself in the mirror, makeup-free and dressed down, she hardly recognized herself. The streets of New York were eerily quiet as her driver, who had looked utterly bewildered when she told him. The pickup time navigated towards the Thompson Grand. Olivia watched the city slip by, her stomach churning with a mixture of dread and nervous anticipation. The Thompson Grand loomed before her, its gleaming facade a testament to luxury and opulence. Olivia had been here many times before, always as a guest in the penthouse suite. Now, she made her way around to the staff entrance, feeling like an imposter. A stern-faced woman in a crisp uniform was waiting for her. "You must be Olivia," she said, her tone neutral. "I'm Maria, Ma. Thompson told me to expect you." Olivia nodded, trying to muster a smile. "Yes, that's me. I'm here to learn." Maria raised an eyebrow but didn't comment. "Follow me. We'll get you set up with a uniform, and then you can start your training." The next few hours were a whirlwind of new experiences for Olivia. She was given a plain, functional uniform that felt stiff and uncomfortable against her skin. Maria walked her through the basics of bed making, bathroom cleaning, and vacuuming, all tasks Olivia had never done before in her life. "Remember," Maria said as she demonstrated the proper way to tuck in a sheet, "our guests expect perfection. Every room should look like it's never been slept in, even if the guest just checked out an hour ago." Olivia watched, trying to absorb every detail. She was determined to prove herself, to show that she wasn't just some spoiled rich girl. But as the morning wore on, she found herself struggling with even the simplest tasks. Her first attempt at making a bed left it looking lumpy and uneven. When she tried to clean a bathroom, she ended up splashing water all over herself, and the vacuum cleaner seemed to have a mind of its own, constantly veering off in unexpected directions. By 10 a.m., Olivia was exhausted, sore, and on the verge of tears. Her perfectly manicured nails were chipped, her hands were raw from cleaning products, and every muscle in her body ached. "All right," Maria said, checking her watch. "Time for your break. You get 15 minutes. Staff room is down the hall." Olivia practically stumbled to the staff room, collapsing into a chair. She pulled out her phone, intending to call her father and tell him this was all a huge mistake. But as she scrolled through her contacts, she paused. What would calling her father prove? That she couldn't handle a single morning of real work? That she was exactly the spoiled, entitled brat everyone thought she was? With a sigh, she put her phone away and looked around the staff room. A few other housekeepers were there, chatting quietly over coffee. They glanced at her curiously, but didn't approach. Olivia felt a pang of loneliness. For the first time in her life, she was truly on her own, without her usual crowd of sycophants and hangers-on. It was a sobering realization. As she sat there, she overheard snippets of conversation from the other housekeepers. They were discussing their families, their struggles with bills, their hopes for their children's future. Olivia found herself listening intently, suddenly aware of how little she knew about the lives of people like this. People who worked hard every day just to make ends meet. Before she knew it, her break was over, and it was time to get back to work. The rest of the day passed in a blur of rooms to be cleaned, sheets to be changed, and surfaces to be polished. By the time her shift ended at 3 p.m., Olivia was dead on her feet. As she changed out of her uniform, wincing at her sore muscles, Maria approached her. "You did okay for your first day," she said, her tone still neutral, but perhaps a touch warmer. "There's a lot of room for improvement, but you didn't give up. That counts for something." Olivia felt a surge of pride at the small compliment. "Thank you," she said sincerely. I know I have a lot to learn." Maria nodded. "See you tomorrow, 6 a.m. sharp." As Olivia made her way out of the hotel, she was struck by how different everything looked from this perspective. The grand lobby, which she had always breezed through without a second thought, now seemed like another world. She watched the guests checking in, noticed for the first time the way some of them spoke to the staff with the same dismissive tone she had so often used herself. Her driver was waiting for her, looking surprised at her appearance. "Rough day, Miss Sinclair?" he asked as she slid into the back seat. Olivia managed a tired smile. "You could say that, James, but I think it was a good day." As they drove home, Olivia found her mind racing. She thought about the other housekeepers, about Maria's no-nonsense attitude, about the sheer physical effort required to do a job she had always taken for granted. She thought about her own behavior, about all the times she had snapped at hotel staff or left a room in complete disarray without a second thought. The shame she felt was profound, but mixed with it was a new sense of determination. When she got home, instead of collapsing into bed, as she desperately wanted to do, Olivia sat down at her desk and opened her laptop. She began reading articles about the hospitality industry, about labor laws and workers' rights. As the sun set over the New York skyline, Olivia Sinclair made a promise to herself. This experience wouldn't just be about proving herself to her father or to Marcus Thompson. It would be about becoming someone she could be proud of, someone who understood the value of hard work and treated others with respect. She had a long way to go, she knew, but for the first time in her life, Olivia felt like she was on the right path. The next few weeks passed in a blur of early mornings, aching muscles, and steep learning curves. Olivia found herself falling into a routine she never thought possible. Each day brought new challenges and, surprisingly, new satisfactions. By the end of her first month, Olivia could make a bed with military precision, clean a bathroom until it sparkled, and navigate the industrial-sized vacuum cleaners with ease. But more than that, she was beginning to understand the intricacies of hotel operations from the ground up. One particularly busy morning, as Olivia was rushing to prepare a suite for a VIP guest, she quite literally ran into Sophie in the hallway. "Oli?" Sophie gasped, taking in her friend's uniform and messy ponytail. "What on earth are you doing here? And dressed like that?" Olivia felt a flash of her old defensiveness, but pushed it aside. "I'm working, Soph. It's a long story." Sophie's eyes widened. "Working? You? I thought this was all some sort of joke when I heard the rumors. But you're serious, aren't you?" Olivia nodded, suddenly aware of the gulf that had opened between her and her old life. "I am. Look, I can't talk now. I have rooms to finish. But maybe we could meet for coffee sometime, when I'm off duty." Sophie nodded, still looking shell-shocked. "Sure, I'd like that." As Sophie walked away, Olivia felt a mix of emotions. Part of her missed her old life, the parties, the carefree attitude, the luxury. But another part, a growing part, felt a sense of pride in what she was accomplishing. Later that week, during a rare moment of downtime, Olivia found herself in conversation with Elena, one of her fellow housekeepers. Elena was a single mother, working 2 jobs to support her children and send money back to her family in Mexico. "It's not easy," Elena confided, her eyes tired but determined. "But I do it for my kids, you know? I want them to have opportunities I never had." Olivia listened, feeling a mix of admiration and shame. She thought about all the opportunities she'd taken for granted, all the times she'd complained about trivial things. "Elena," she said hesitantly, "I was wondering, would you be willing to teach me Spanish? I think it would help me communicate better with the team, and, well, I've always wanted to learn." Elena's face lit up. "Of course, I would be happy to teach you, Olivia. And maybe you could help me with my English in return?" From that day on, Olivia and Elena would practice language together during breaks and slow periods. It was more than just language exchange. It was a bridge between 2 worlds that Olivia had never thought could connect. As her second month at the Thompson Grand began, Olivia found herself being given more responsibilities. Maria, who had initially been skeptical of the rich girl playing at work, had come to respect Olivia's dedication and willingness to learn. "Olivia," Maria called one morning, "I need you to handle the Platinum Suite today. We have a particularly challenging guest checking in." Olivia nodded, feeling a mix of excitement and nervousness. The Platinum Suite was the hotel's most luxurious offering. usually reserved for celebrities and high-profile business executives. As she prepared the suite, making sure every detail was perfect, Olivia found herself thinking about the guest who would soon occupy this space. Once, she would have seen them as a peer, someone to impress or compete with. Now, she saw them as simply another person deserving of respect and good service. Just as she was finishing up, there was a commotion in the hallway. Olivia stepped out to see a man berating one of the bellhops, his face red with anger. "Do you have any idea who I am?" The man was shouting. "This is unacceptable. I demand to speak to the manager immediately." Olivia felt a chill run down her spine. She recognized that tone, that attitude. It was like looking into a mirror of her past self. Without thinking, she stepped forward. "Sir," she said calmly, "I apologize for any inconvenience. I'm in charge of preparing your suite. If there's a problem, I'd be happy to address it personally." The man turned his glare on her, but Olivia stood her ground. She listened patiently as he listed his grievances. The room temperature wasn't perfect. The view wasn't exactly what he'd expected. The minibar wasn't stocked with his preferred brand of sparkling water. In the past, Olivia might have matched his anger with her own or caved to his demands out of fear. Now, she took a deep breath and smiled. "I understand, sir," she said. "Let me see what I can do to make your stay more comfortable." Over the next hour, Olivia worked tirelessly to address each of the man's concerns. She adjusted the air conditioning, rearranged the furniture to improve the view, and personally went to the store to get the specific water he wanted. By the time she was done, the man's anger had dissipated. He looked at Olivia with a mix of surprise and grudging respect. "Thank you," he said gruffly. "I appreciate your efforts." As Olivia left the suite, she felt a surge of satisfaction unlike anything she'd experienced before. She had diffused a tense situation, made a guest happy, and done her job well, all without resorting to name-dropping or throwing her weight around. That evening, as she was changing out of her uniform, Olivia received a text from her father. "Dinner tonight? I'd like to hear how things are going." Olivia hesitated for a moment, then replied with a yes. As she made her way to the restaurant, she realized she was actually looking forward to seeing her father, not to complain or ask for things, but to share what she'd learned. Ethan Sinclair was already seated when Olivia arrived. He stood as she approached, his eyes widening slightly as he took in her appearance. Gone was the designer dress and perfectly coiffed hair. Instead, Olivia wore simple jeans and a blouse, her hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. "Olivia," he said, his voice warm, "you look different." Olivia smiled as she sat down. "I feel different. I think I'm starting to understand what you and Mr. Thompson were trying to teach me." Over dinner, Olivia found herself talking more openly with her father than she had in years. She told him about the challenges she'd faced, the people she'd met, the lessons she'd learned. To her surprise, Ethan listened intently, asking questions and nodding with approval. "I'm proud of you, Olivia," he said as they finished their meal. "I know this hasn't been easy, but you're proving yourself in ways I never expected." Olivia felt a warmth in her chest at her father's words. For the first time in a long time, she felt truly worthy of his pride. As she made her way home that night, Olivia reflected on how much had changed in just 2 months. She still had a long way to go, she knew. There were still moments when her old self threatened to resurface, when the temptation to take the easy way out was strong. But with each passing day, Olivia was becoming someone new, someone stronger, more compassionate, and more aware of the world around her. And for the first time in her life, she was truly excited about what the future might hold. As Olivia entered her 3rd month at the Thompson Grand, she found herself facing new challenges and opportunities. Maria had taken notice of her progress and decided it was time to expose Olivia to other aspects of hotel operations. "You've done well in housekeeping," Maria told her one morning, "but there's more to running a hotel than clean rooms. This week, you'll be rotating through different departments: front desk, concierge, food service, and maintenance." Olivia nodded, feeling a mix of excitement and apprehension. She had grown comfortable with her housekeeping routine, and the thought of starting over in new roles was daunting. but she was determined to learn as much as she could. Her first day at the front desk was a baptism by fire. The computer system seemed impossibly complex, and the constant stream of guests checking in and out left her head spinning. By lunchtime, she had accidentally double-booked a room, misplaced a guest luggage, and been yelled at by a disgruntled business traveler. "Don't worry," said Tom, the front desk manager, as Olivia fought back tears of frustration. "Everyone struggles at first. The key is to stay calm and remember that every guest interaction is an opportunity to make someone's day better." Olivia took his words to heart, and by the end of the week, she was handling check-ins with growing confidence. She even managed to smooth over a potential crisis when a famous musician's reservation was lost, finding him a suitable room and arranging for complimentary champagne to be sent up. Her time with the concierge team opened Olivia's eyes to a whole new side of New York. She had always taken her knowledge of the city's hotspots for granted, but now she found herself learning about hidden gems and local favorites she had never known existed. "It's not just about the fancy restaurants and Broadway shows," explained Jamal, the head concierge. "Sometimes it's about finding that perfect little coffee shop or that off-the-beaten-path art gallery. Our job is to help guests experience the real New York." Olivia threw herself into learning everything she could about the city, determined to be able to offer genuine, personalized recommendations to guests. She found herself exploring parts of New York she had never bothered with before, discovering a richness and diversity to her hometown that she had been blind to in her previous life. Food service proved to be one of the most challenging rotations. The pace in the hotel's kitchen was relentless, and Olivia quickly gained a new respect for the staff who produced gourmet meals day in and day out. She burned herself, cut herself, and dropped more plates than she cared to admit. But she also learned the satisfaction of creating something with her own hands and seeing the appreciation on guests' faces. It was during her time in food service that Olivia had an unexpected encounter. She was helping to set up for a charity gala in the hotel's grand ballroom when she heard a familiar voice. "Olivia? Olivia Sinclair? Is that really you?" She turned to see Bradley Worthington III, a fixture of her old social circle and someone she had briefly dated. He was staring at her with a mix of disbelief and amusement, taking in her server's uniform and the tray of canapes she was arranging. "Bradley," Olivia said, forcing a smile. "How are you?" "I'm great," he replied, still looking bemused. "But what on earth are you doing? Is this some kind of charity stunt? Slumming it for a day to impress Daddy?" Olivia felt a flash of her old shame and defensiveness, but she pushed it down. "No, Bradley, I work here. I'm learning the business from the ground up." Bradley laughed, clearly not believing her. "Oh, come on, Oli. You can drop the act with me. We all know you're not cut out for real work. Why don't you let these people do their jobs and come join us at the bar? I'll buy you a drink for old times." Saki. Quotes. For a moment, Olivia was tempted. It would be so easy to slip back into her old life, to laugh this all off as a silly experiment. But then she thought of Maria's grudging respect, of Elena's friendship, of her father's pride. She thought of how much she had learned and grown over the past months. "Thank you, Bradley, but I have work to do," she said firmly. "Enjoy the gala." As she turned away, she caught sight of Marcus Thompson watching her from across the room. He gave her a small nod of approval, and Olivia felt a surge of pride stronger than any she had ever felt at one of these social events. Her final rotation in maintenance was an eye-opener. Olivia had never given much thought to what went on behind the scenes to keep a luxury hotel running smoothly. Now, she found herself learning about complex HVAC systems, electrical work, and plumbing. "It's not glamorous," said Joe, the gruff head of maintenance. "But without us, this place would fall apart. Remember that next time you think about looking down on the guy fixing your AC." Olivia took his words to heart, gaining a new appreciation for the interconnectedness of all the hotel's operations. She also discovered an unexpected satisfaction in fixing things with her own hands, in solving tangible problems, and seeing immediate results. As the rotations came to an end, Olivia found herself reflecting on how much she had learned not just about hotel operations, but about people, about work, about herself. She had formed genuine friendships with her coworkers, people she would have barely noticed in her previous life. She had discovered strengths she never knew she possessed and confronted weaknesses she had always denied. One evening, as she was leaving work, she ran into Marcus Thompson in the lobby. He invited her to join him for a coffee, and Olivia found herself sitting across from the man who had set this whole journey in motion. "So, Miss Sinclair," Marcus said, his eyes twinkling, "how are you finding your crash course in hospitality?" Olivia took a moment to gather her thoughts. "It's been transformative," she said finally. "I've learned so much, not just about the business, but about myself. I realize now how narrow my worldview was before, how much I took for granted." Marcus nodded approvingly. "And what about the future? Do you see yourself continuing in this industry?" Olivia hesitated. I think I do. There's so much more to learn, so many ways to grow. But more than that, I found a sense of purpose here that I never had before. I feel like I'm part of something bigger than myself, like I'm making a real difference in people's lives. Even if it's just by ensuring they have a comfortable stay. Single quotes, Marcus smiled. "That's exactly the attitude I was hoping to see." "Olivia, I have a proposition for you. How would you like to join our management training program? It's intense, and you'll still have to work your way up, but it's a path to a real leadership role in the company." Olivia felt a surge of excitement, but also a twinge of uncertainty. "I'm honored, Mr. Thompson, but what about my father's company? I thought the whole point of this was to prepare me to take over Sinclair Enterprises one day." Marcus leaned back, his expression thoughtful. "The point, Olivia, was to help you become the kind of person who could lead effectively and ethically in whatever field you chose. I think you've more than proven your potential. The question now is, what do you want?" As Olivia left the hotel that night, her mind was whirling with possibilities. For the first time in her life, she felt truly in control of her destiny. She had options, skills, and a newfound confidence in her abilities. Whatever she decided, she knew one thing for certain. The Olivia Sinclair who had entered the Thompson Grand 3 months ago was gone. In her place was a woman who understood the value of hard work, the importance of treating others with respect, and the satisfaction of earning her place in the world. The future was uncertain, but for once, that uncertainty felt exciting rather than daunting. Olivia Sinclair was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, armed with the lessons she had learned and the strength she had discovered within herself. As Olivia grappled with Marcus's offer and the implications it held for her future, she found herself at a crossroads. The management training program was an exciting opportunity, but it would mean fully committing to a path different from the one her father had always envisioned for her. One evening, as she sat in her apartment pondering her decision, Olivia's phone buzzed with a message from Sophie. "Drinks tonight? We need to catch up." Olivia hesitated. She hadn't seen much of her old friends since starting at the Thompson Grand, but after a moment's consideration, she agreed. It was time to face her old world with her new perspective. The bar Sophie had chosen was one they used to frequent often, all sleek lines and overpriced cocktails. As Olivia walked in, she felt a strange sense of displacement. The environment was familiar, but she no longer felt like she belonged. Sophie waved her over, looking as polished and put together as ever. "Oli, God, it's been ages. You look different." Olivia smiled as she sat down. "I feel different, Soph. A lot has changed." As they caught up, Olivia found herself viewing her old life through new eyes. Sophie's chatter about the latest gossip and social dramas now seemed trivial and unimportant. When Sophie complained about her housekeeper being late one day, Olivia had to bite her tongue to stop herself from launching into a defense of how hard housekeeping staff work. "So, darling," Sophie said, sipping her martini, "when does this little experiment of yours end? We miss you at the parties. Bradley was just saying the other day how dull things have been without you." Olivia took a deep breath. "It's not an experiment, Soph. It's my job, and I don't think it's going to end. In fact, I've been offered a place in the management training program." Sophie's eyes widened in disbelief. "You can't be serious, Oli. You're not actually considering staying in the hotel business, are you?" What about Sinclair Enterprises? I don't know yet, Olivia admitted. I'm still figuring things out. But I do know that I've learned more in the past few months than I did in years of partying and shopping. I've discovered I'm capable of so much more than I ever gave myself credit for. Sophie's expression softened. I hardly recognize you, Oli, but you seem happy. Happier than I've seen you in a long time. As they parted ways that night, Olivia felt a bittersweet pang. She knew her relationship with Sophie, and with much of her old life, would never be the same. But she also felt a sense of freedom, of having outgrown a world that no longer fit who she was becoming. The next day, Olivia decided it was time to have a serious conversation with her father. She invited him to meet her at a small cafe near the hotel. Not the type of place they would have frequented in the past, but somewhere she had come to appreciate during her time working at the Thompson Grand. Ethan Sinclair arrived looking slightly out of place in his expensive suit. As they sat down, Olivia could see the questions in his eyes. "Dad," she began, "I need to talk to you about the future, about Sinclair Enterprises, and about what you and Mr. Thompson have been planning for me." Ethan nodded, his expression serious. "Go on." Olivia took a deep breath. "I'm grateful for the opportunity you've given me. These past few months have taught me so much, but I'm not sure if taking over Sinclair Enterprises is the right path for me anymore." She saw a flicker of disappointment cross her father's face, but he remained silent, letting her continue. "Mr. Thompson has offered me a place in his management training program, and I'm seriously considering it. I've discovered a passion for this industry that I never knew I had. But more than that, I've learned the value of earning my place, of understanding every aspect of a business from the ground up." Ethan was quiet for a long moment. Then, to Olivia's surprise, he smiled. "Olivia, when Marcus and I came up with this plan, we had two goals in mind. The first was to teach you the value of hard work and respect for others. The second was to help you find your own path, even if that path wasn't the one I had always imagined for you." He reached across the table, taking her hand. "I'm proud of you, Olivia, more proud than I can express. You've grown so much, and if this is truly what you want, then you have my full support." Olivia felt tears prickling at her eyes. "Really? You're not disappointed?" Ethan shook his head. "Disappointed? No. A little sad, perhaps, that you won't be following directly in my footsteps. But mostly, I'm excited to see where this new path takes you. And who knows? Maybe one day we'll find a way to bring Thompson Hotels and Sinclair Enterprises together in a way we never imagined." As they continued to talk, Olivia felt a weight lifting off her shoulders. She had been so worried about disappointing her father that she hadn't considered he might be proud of her for forging her own way. The next week, Olivia marched into Marcus Thompson's office, her head held high. "Mr. Thompson," she said, "I'd like to accept your offer for the management training program." Marcus grinned. "I was hoping you'd say that." "Welcome aboard, Olivia. The real work starts now." And so began the next chapter of Olivia Sinclair's journey. The management training program was even more intense than her time in the various departments had been. She was expected to master not just the practical aspects of hotel operations, but also finance, marketing, human resources, and strategic planning. There were times when she felt overwhelmed, when the complexity of running a major hotel chain seemed beyond her capabilities. But in those moments, she would remember how far she had come, how much she had already overcome. She threw herself into her studies with the same determination she had once applied to being the life of every party. She worked long hours, often being the first to arrive and the last to leave. Her co-workers, who had initially been skeptical of the rich girl in their midst, came to respect her work ethic and genuine desire to learn. 6 months into the program, Olivia faced her biggest challenge yet. The Thompson Grand was hosting a major international conference, and due to a series of unfortunate events, Olivia found herself in charge of ensuring everything ran smoothly. As she stood in the lobby, watching delegates from around the world stream in, Olivia felt a moment of panic. What if she wasn't ready for this level of responsibility? What if she made a mistake that embarrassed the company and proved everyone who had doubted her right? But then she took a deep breath, remembering all she had learned. She thought of Maria's no-nonsense efficiency, of Tom's calm under pressure at the front desk, of Jamal's attention to detail in the concierge department. She had learned from the best, and now it was time to put those lessons into practice. Over the next 3 days, Olivia was a whirlwind of activity. She coordinated with the kitchen to ensure dietary restrictions were met, worked with the maintenance team to quickly resolve a plumbing issue, and personally smoothed over a potentially disastrous room allocation mix-up. There were moments of stress and near disaster, but Olivia handled each crisis with a level head and a determination to find solutions. By the end of the conference, she was exhausted but exhilarated. As the last of the delegates checked out, Marcus Thompson approached her. "Well done, Olivia," he said, his voice warm with approval. "I've had nothing but compliments about how smoothly everything ran. You should be proud of yourself." Olivia beamed, feeling a sense of accomplishment unlike anything she had ever experienced in her old life. "Thank you, Mr. Thompson. I couldn't have done it without the amazing team here." Marcus nodded approvingly. "That right there, recognizing the value of your team, that's what makes a true leader." "You've come a long way, Olivia Sinclair." As she made her way home that evening, Olivia found herself reflecting on the journey that had brought her to this point. She thought of the spoiled, entitled girl she had been and marveled at how much she had changed. She realized that the lesson her father and Marcus Thompson had wanted to teach her wasn't just about the value of hard work or understanding a business from the ground up. It was about finding purpose, about the satisfaction that comes from earning your place in the world and contributing to something larger than yourself. Olivia Sinclair had entered the Thompson Grand as a girl playing at being an adult. She was emerging as a woman ready to take on the world, armed with knowledge, experience, and a newfound respect for herself and others. As she looked out over the New York skyline, Olivia felt a sense of excitement for what the future held. She knew there would be more challenges ahead, more lessons to learn. But for the first time in her life, she felt truly ready to face them. The girl who had once defined herself by her designer clothes and social status was gone. In her place stood a woman of substance, ready to make her mark on the world, not because of her name or her wealth, but because of who she had become and what she had earned. Olivia Sinclair was ready for whatever came next. As Olivia continued to excel in her role at the Thompson Grand, her reputation within the company grew. She was no longer seen as the boss's pet project or the spoiled rich girl playing at work. Instead, she had become known for her work ethic, innovative ideas, and ability to connect with both staff and guests. One morning, about a year into her management training program, Olivia was surprised to receive a summons to Marcus Thompson's office. As she rode the elevator to the top floor, she couldn't help but feel a flutter of nervousness. Despite her progress, a part of her still feared she might have done something wrong. Marcus greeted her with a warm smile, immediately putting her at ease. "Olivia, please, sit down. I have an interesting proposition for you." Intrigued, Olivia took a seat across from him. "What kind of proposition, Mr. Thompson?" Marcus leaned forward, his eyes sparkling with excitement. "We're looking to expand our brand into a new market. Specifically, we're considering opening our first hotel in Dubai. It's a huge opportunity, but also a significant challenge. We need someone to oversee the project, someone who understands our brand ethos, but can also adapt to a very different cultural context." Olivia's heart raced. Was he suggesting what she thought he was? Marcus continued, "I think you might be the right person for this job, Olivia. You've shown remarkable growth and adaptability. Your background gives you an understanding of luxury that will be crucial in the Dubai market. But your experiences here have given you the practical knowledge and humility to build something from the ground up." Olivia was stunned. "Mr. Thompson, I'm honored. But are you sure I'm ready for something like this? It's a massive responsibility." Marcus nodded, his expression serious. "It is. And a year ago, I wouldn't have considered you, but you've proven yourself time and time again. You've earned this opportunity, Olivia. The question is, are you willing to take it?" Olivia took a deep breath, her mind whirling with the possibilities. Dubai was a world away from New York, both literally and figuratively. It would mean leaving behind everything familiar, facing challenges she couldn't even imagine yet. But as she thought about it, she felt a surge of excitement. This was exactly the kind of opportunity she had been working towards, a chance to truly prove herself and make her mark on the company. "Yes," she said firmly. "Yes, I'll do it." Marcus grinned. "Excellent. I was hoping you'd say that. Now, let's talk details." The next few weeks were a whirlwind of preparation. Olivia threw herself into research about Dubai's culture, business practices, and hospitality industry. She spent hours in meetings with the company's international development team, learning about the intricacies of opening a hotel in a foreign market. As news of her new role spread through the hotel, Olivia was touched by the reactions of her colleagues. Maria, the once stern housekeeping manager, pulled her aside one day. "I'm proud of you, chica," she said. Her usual gruff tone softened with emotion. "You've come a long way from that first day when you couldn't even make a bed properly. You're going to do great things in Dubai." Even Elena, who had become one of Olivia's closest friends, was supportive despite her sadness and Olivia's departure. "You've worked hard for this," she said during their final Spanish lesson. "Just don't forget us little people when you're running your big fancy hotel in the desert, okay?" Olivia laughed, but felt a lump in her throat. "Never," she promised. "I owe so much to all of you. I'll never forget that." The night before her departure, Olivia had dinner with her father. As they sat in a cozy Italian restaurant, a far cry from the upscale establishments they used to frequent, Ethan Sinclair raised his glass in a toast. "To my daughter," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "who has surpassed all my expectations and made me prouder than I ever thought possible." Olivia clinked her glass against his, blinking back tears. "Thank you, Dad, for everything, for believing in me even when I didn't believe in myself." As they ate, they talked about the future. Ethan shared his plans for Sinclair Enterprises, and for the first time, Olivia found herself genuinely interested in the intricacies of the real estate business. She realized that her experiences at the Thompson Grand had given her a new perspective on her father's work, an appreciation for the impact that thoughtful development could have on a community. "You know," Ethan said as they finished their meal, "I always thought you'd be taking over Sinclair Enterprises one day. But seeing you now, hearing about your plans for Dubai, I realized that you're going to make a much bigger impact on the world than you ever could have just following in my footsteps." Olivia felt a warmth spread through her chest at her father's words. "I learned from the best," she said softly. "Everything I am now, everything I'm able to do. It started with you, Dad, with the lesson you and Mr. Thompson taught me." The next morning, as Olivia boarded the plane to Dubai, she felt a mix of excitement and trepidation. She was leaving behind everything familiar, embarking on a journey into the unknown. But she was no longer the girl who had walked into the Thompson Grand over a year ago, terrified of hard work and obsessed with her own status. Now, she was Olivia Sinclair, rising star of the Thompson Hotels Group, ready to take on the challenge of building something new in a foreign land. She carried with her the lessons she had learned, the friendships she had forged, and a newfound confidence in her own abilities. As the plane took off, soaring over the New York skyline, Olivia smiled to herself. The path ahead was uncertain, filled with potential pitfalls and challenges. But for the first time in her life, she felt truly ready to face whatever came her way. The story of Olivia Sinclair was far from over. In many ways, it was just beginning. But one thing was certain: the spoiled, entitled heiress was gone for good. In her place was a woman of substance, ready to make her mark on the world not through her family name or wealth, but through her own hard work, determination, and newfound understanding of what truly mattered in life. As New York faded into the distance below, Olivia turned her gaze forward, towards the horizon and the new adventures that awaited her in Dubai. She was ready to write the next chapter of her story, one that would be entirely her own. The scorching Dubai sun beat down on Olivia as she stepped out of the air-conditioned sanctuary of her temporary apartment. 6 months had passed since her arrival in this glittering city of contrasts, and every day brought new challenges and revelations. The sight of the future Thompson Dubai rose before her, a skeleton of steel and glass reaching towards the sky. As she approached, workers in hard hats nodded respectfully. "Good morning, mums." Sinclair, they called out in a mix of accents: Indian, Pakistani, Filipino, Emirati. Olivia returned their greetings, making a point to use the few Arabic phrases she had mastered. Her first weeks in Dubai had been a stark reminder of how much she still had to learn. The cultural differences, the complex business regulations, the delicate balance of tradition and modernity, it had all seemed overwhelming at first. But Olivia was not the same woman who had once sneered at a waiter over a drop of wine. She approached each new challenge with determination and humility, knowing that every obstacle overcome was another step in her growth. As she entered the on-site office, her assistant, Fatima, greeted her with a warm smile. Is Sinclair, the design team is ready for your review of the latest suite layouts. Olivia nodded, grateful once again for Fatima's efficiency and cultural insights. The young Emirati woman had been invaluable in helping Olivia navigate the intricacies of doing business in the UAE. The morning flew by in a flurry of meetings, design reviews, budget discussions, marketing strategies. Olivia found herself drawing on every lesson she had learned at the Thompson Grand, from the importance of impeccable housekeeping standards to the nuances of guest relations. As she pored over the plans for the hotel's signature restaurant, Olivia's mind flashed back to her time in food service. She remembered the burns, the cuts, the exhaustion, but also the pride of creating something with her own hands. Now, she was determined to create a dining experience that would honor the hard work of every chef and server. "I think we need to reconsider the kitchen layout," she told the design team. "Let's prioritize efficiency and worker comfort. Happy staff means better service for our guests." The team looked surprised but quickly adapted to her suggestions. Olivia smiled inwardly, remembering a time when she wouldn't have given a second thought to the working conditions of hotel staff. As the day wore on, Olivia found herself facing a familiar challenge, a clash between local customs and the Thompson brand standards. The issue at hand was the hotel's pool area. The local partners were pushing for separate facilities for men and women, while Olivia was trying to maintain the open, inclusive atmosphere that was a hallmark of Thompson hotels. She sat in a tense meeting with the local investors, acutely aware of the cultural tightrope she was walking. In her old life, Olivia might have bulldozed ahead, insisting on her way or no way, but her experiences had taught her the value of listening and finding common ground. "Gentlemen," she said carefully, "I understand your concerns, and I respect the cultural traditions of Dubai. What if we created a compromise? We could have the main pool area open to all, but also include private, luxurious pool cabanas that can be reserved for families or individuals seeking more privacy." The investors exchanged glances, considering her proposal. After a moment, the lead investor, Sheikh Abdullah, nodded slowly. "An interesting solution, Miss Sinclair. It shows creativity and respect. Let us explore this idea further." As the meeting adjourned, Olivia felt a sense of accomplishment. She was learning to balance the expectations of the brand with the realities of the local market, a skill that would be crucial for the hotel's success. Later that afternoon, as she was reviewing staffing plans, Olivia received an unexpected video call. Her face lit up as she saw the familiar faces of Elena and Maria on the screen. "Surprise!" Elena called out. "We thought we'd check in on our Dubai diva." Olivia laughed, feeling a pang of homesickness. "You guys, it's so good to see you. How's everything at the Grand?" As they chatted, Olivia found herself regaling them with stories of her experiences in Dubai, the challenges, the cultural faux pas, the small victories. She realized how much she had grown, how much more confident and capable she had become. "You know," Maria said, her usual gruff tone softened by a hint of pride, "when you first started with us, I never would have believed you'd be where you are now. You've come a long way, chica." Olivia felt a lump in her throat. "I couldn't have done it without you both. You taught me so much." After the call ended, Olivia stood by the window of her office, looking out over the Dubai skyline. The sun was setting, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and pink. She thought about how far she had come, not just geographically, but as a person. Her phone buzzed with a message from her father. "How's my globe-trotting hotelier doing? Proud of you, sweetheart." Olivia smiled, typing back a quick reply. Her relationship with her father had deepened and matured over the past months. They now spoke as equals, sharing insights about their respective businesses and supporting each other's endeavors. As she prepared to leave the office, Olivia's eye caught on a framed photo on her desk. It was a group shot from her last day at the Thompson Grand. Olivia, surrounded by the housekeeping staff, the front desk team, the kitchen crew, all smiling, all equals. She picked up the photo, running her finger over the familiar faces. These were the people who had shaped her, who had taught her the true meaning of hard work and respect. In many ways, they were the foundation upon which she was building this new hotel. Olivia's mind drifted to the future. The Thompson Dubai was still months away from completion, but she was already thinking ahead. There were other markets to explore, other challenges to face. She had ideas for innovating the guest experience, for making the Thompson brand synonymous with not just luxury, but also cultural sensitivity and social responsibility. As she stepped out into the warm Dubai evening, Olivia felt a sense of excitement for what lay ahead. She was no longer defined by her family name or her trust fund. She had forged her own identity, earned her place in the world through hard work and perseverance. The entitled girl who had once looked down on a waiter was gone. In her place stood a woman of substance, ready to lead with empathy, creativity, and a deep understanding of the value of every individual in her organization. Olivia Sinclair was building more than just a hotel. She was building a legacy, one that honored the lessons of her past and looked forward to a future full of possibility. As she hailed a taxi to head home, Olivia's phone buzzed again. It was a message from Marcus Thompson. "Board meeting next week in New York. Time to present your progress. Ready to show them what you've accomplished?" Olivia smiled, typing back a confident reply. "More than ready. See you in New York." As the taxi wove through the bustling Dubai traffic, Olivia felt a surge of anticipation. She was ready to show the board and the world just how far she had come. The journey that had begun with a humbling lesson in a New York restaurant was far from over. In fact, Olivia realized it was just getting started. The New York skyline came into view as Olivia's plane began its descent. A wave of nostalgia washed over her, mixed with a newfound appreciation for the city that had shaped her. It had been over a year since she'd left for Dubai, and she felt like a different person returning to familiar ground. As she made her way through JFK, Olivia caught sight of her reflection in a shop window. Gone was the designer-clad socialite of her past. In her place stood a confident professional in a tasteful but understated suit, her posture radiating purpose and self-assurance. Her father was waiting for her at arrivals, and Olivia felt a surge of warmth as she saw him. They embraced, the gesture far more natural and affectionate than it had been in years past. "Welcome home, sweetheart," Ethan said, his pride evident in his voice. "You look different." "Dubai agrees with you," Olivia smiled. "It's been quite a journey, Dad. I have so much to tell you." As they drove into the city, Olivia found herself seeing New York through new eyes. She noticed details she'd never paid attention to before: the intricate architecture of older buildings, the diverse faces of people on the streets, the complex dance of traffic and pedestrians. "You know," she said thoughtfully, "working in Dubai has made me appreciate New York in a whole new way. The diversity, the energy, it's unique." Ethan nodded. "It's a special place." "And speaking of special places, I hope you're planning to visit your old stomping grounds while you're here." Olivia knew he meant the Thompson Grand. "Absolutely. I wouldn't miss it for the world." The next morning, Olivia stood outside the Thompson Grand, a bundle of nervous energy. Taking a deep breath, she pushed through the revolving doors and into the lobby. For a moment, no one noticed her. She watched the buzz of activity, guests checking in, bellhops maneuvering luggage carts, the concierge deftly handling inquiries. It was a finely tuned machine, one she had once been a part of. Then, a familiar voice called out, "Olivia? Olivia Sinclair, is that you?" She turned to see Tom, the front desk manager, beaming at her. Within moments, word of her arrival spread through the hotel like wildfire. Staff members appeared from all directions, eager to greet her. Maria emerged from the back office, her stern facade cracking into a warm smile. "Look who's back from the desert. Come here, chica." As Olivia hugged Maria, she felt tears pricking at her eyes. "I've missed you all so much," she said, her voice thick with emotion. For the next hour, Olivia was swept up in a whirlwind of reunions. She listened to updates on everyone's lives, shared stories of her experiences in Dubai, and marveled at how much and how little had changed. Elena, now promoted to head of housekeeping, pulled her aside. "You know, Olivia, you're still an inspiration to many of us here. Whenever a new employee complains about the work being too hard, we tell them your story." Olivia felt a lump in her throat. "I'm the one who should be inspired by all of you. Everything I've accomplished, I owe to what I learned here." As she made her way through the hotel, Olivia found herself dispensing advice, sharing insights from her Dubai project, and even rolling up her sleeves to help with a particularly challenging guest situation. It felt like coming home, but also like a validation of how far she'd come. Later that afternoon, Olivia stood in Marcus Thompson's office, preparing to present her progress on the Dubai project to the board. As executives filed in, she felt a moment of trepidation. These were the same people who had once viewed her as nothing more than Ethan Sinclair's spoiled daughter. Now, she was about to show them just how much she had changed. Taking a deep breath, Olivia launched into her presentation. She spoke with confidence and passion, detailing the challenges she'd overcome, the innovations she'd implemented, and her vision for the future of Thompson Dubai. As she concluded, there was a moment of silence. Then, Marcus Thompson began to applaud, a broad smile on his face. The rest of the board joined in, their expressions a mix of surprise and admiration. "Impressive, Ms. Sinclair," said one board member. "Very impressive indeed. You've clearly thrived in this role." Another chimed in. "I must admit, I had my doubts when you were first appointed to this project, but you've more than proven yourself. The Thompson Dubai is shaping up to be a flagship property for our brand." Olivia felt a surge of pride, but also a deep sense of humility. "Thank you," she said sincerely, "but I can't take all the credit. This project is the result of incredible teamwork, both here and in Dubai, and it's built on the foundation of everything I learned right here at the Thompson Grand." As the meeting adjourned, Marcus held her back. "Olivia, I couldn't be prouder of what you've accomplished. You've exceeded every expectation I had when we started this journey." Olivia smiled. "Thank you, Mr. Thompson, for everything, for giving me the chance to prove myself, for believing in me even when I didn't believe in myself." Marcus nodded, then his expression turned serious. "Now, let's talk about the future. The board is impressed, and there are murmurs about expanding our presence in the Middle East. How would you feel about overseeing that expansion once the Dubai project is complete?" Olivia felt a thrill of excitement at the prospect. "I'd be honored, Mr. Thompson, but I'd like to propose an addition to that plan." "Oh?" Marcus raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "Yes," Olivia continued, her mind racing with ideas that had been forming over the past year. "I think there's an opportunity to create a leadership development program, similar to what I went through, but on a larger scale. We could identify promising employees at all levels of our organization and give them the chance to grow, to learn every aspect of the business." Marcus leaned back, a slow smile spreading across his face. "Go on. We could rotate them through different properties, different roles, not just in the US, but internationally. Imagine the pool of talent we could develop, the fresh perspectives we could bring to our operations worldwide." As Olivia outlined her vision, she could see Marcus growing more and more excited. "Olivia," he said when she finished, "I think you might have just outlined the future of Thompson Hotels. Let's develop this idea further." That evening, as Olivia stood on the rooftop bar of the Thompson Grand, looking out over the New York skyline, she felt a profound sense of coming full circle. She thought about the entitled young woman who had once carelessly insulted a waiter in this very building. That woman seemed like a stranger now, a distant memory. Her father joined her, handing her a glass of champagne. "To new beginnings," he said, clinking his glass against hers. Olivia smiled. and to valuable lessons, she added. As they stood in comfortable silence, Olivia's mind drifted to the future. She thought about the Dubai project nearing completion, about the potential expansion in the Middle East, about her idea for a leadership development program. She thought about all the lives she might touch, all the opportunities she might create for others to grow and learn as she had. The entitled heiress who had entered the Thompson Grand that fateful day was gone. In her place stood Olivia Sinclair, hotelier, leader, visionary, a woman who understood the value of hard work, the importance of treating every individual with respect, and the transformative power of humility and perseverance. As the sun set over New York, painting the sky in brilliant hues, Olivia raised her glass in a silent toast to second chances, to unexpected journeys, and to the incredible power of a lesson well learned. The story of Olivia Sinclair was far from over. In many ways, it was just beginning. But one thing was certain: whatever challenges lay ahead, she was ready to face them with grace, determination, and a deep appreciation for every person who had helped shape her journey. As the lights of the city began to twinkle in the gathering dusk, Olivia smiled to herself. The future was bright, full of possibility, and she couldn't wait to see what it held. If you enjoyed this story, we'd love for you to support us by leaving a like and subscribing to our Slices of Life channel. We'd also love to hear from you in the comments. Which city are you talking about? It's very rewarding for us to provide our followers with an enjoyable moment. We appreciate the unconditional support you show us in every story. Blessings!